Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.
Hello and welcome to Decoding Business Growth. I'm Mytrah Energy. There is a new trend that's quite discernible these days, and that is the rise of serial entrepreneurs in our country. Their numbers seem to be slowly but surely rising, and that's good for the economy. But academically speaking, are these serial entrepreneurs any different from the typical entrepreneurs we know so well? Well, the Webster Dictionary defines a serial entrepreneur as one who continuously comes up with new ideas and starts new businesses. A typical entrepreneur comes up with an idea, he starts a company, sees it through, and plays an important role in the day-to-day functioning of that company. A serial entrepreneur, on the other hand, will often come up with the idea, he'll get things started, even run the business for a few years, and then sell it for a good profit, only to move on to a new idea, another new venture. That definition fits Ravi Shankar Kailas very well. He's a successful serial entrepreneur who's founded 3 startups, all of which have sold for a good price. With that money, he's now turned his focus to a business that's been close to his heart, wind energy. And that's how Mytrah Energy came into being in 2010. So strong was his conviction that investors have poured in $700 million into this company. Looking at Ravi Kailas's vision, one can safely predict that this serial entrepreneur has turned into a typical entrepreneur. Take a look at the Mytrah Energy story.
Sounds incredible, but it's true. In a short span of 4 years, Mytrah Energy managed to raise $700 million from the domestic as well as the international market and commission 543 megawatt wind power plants in India, which are all up and running. And credit for this impressive achievement goes singularly to Ravi Shankar Kailas, the 49-year-old chairman of the company, whose philosophy is to deliver sustainable energy without subsidies. Here, he seems to be on the right track as Mytrah has emerged as one of the largest renewable-focused independent power producers in the country, with 10 of its projects located in Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Taking a long-term view, Kailas sells power mainly to state electricity boards by entering into 13 to 25-year power purchase agreements. In Tamil Nadu, he has made an exception by selling 100 megawatts directly to the customers on long-term agreements. This long-term contract has been possible as it generates green power, which costs the same as thermal power. In the initial years, Mytrah used to buy projects on a turnkey basis, but soon changed its strategy to become an integrated wind power company, doing everything, right from planning to land acquisition, development to EPC works, except sourcing the turbines. To supplement this, it installed 172 wind masts across the country. This data bank helps the management zero in on the right site to install the windmill, so no investment can go wrong. All these initiatives have helped Mytrah to ramp up its capacity from 0 in 2011 to 182 megawatts in 2012. This was further hiked to 310 megawatts in 2013. In 2014, it added 218.5 megawatts, taking its capacity to 528.5 megawatts. Today, its total capacity stands at 543 megawatts as it added 14.5 megawatts in 2015. What sets the company apart from its peer group is the value chain it has captured right from the wind data bank to long-term power purchase agreements. So how did this company come into being? Promoter Ravi Shankar Kailas is a serial entrepreneur who, after majoring in BE from Osmania University, Andhra Pradesh, did his graduation from Stanford University. After his graduation, he did a short stint in the US before returning to India. In 1994, he set up a telecom marketing and retailing company, Zip Global Telecom in Mumbai, by taking a loan from his father. This company found favors from venture capitalists. After that, there was no looking behind. He promoted Zeus Technologies, which launched the world's first prepaid roaming card, and Altius, a real estate financial options company. With all his businesses doing well, Kailas shifted his base to London, but all his businesses were India-focused.
Renewables is at a very interesting period in the history of global energy. In the 19th century, coal was the basis of energy, and in the 20th century, it was oil. But if you're looking forward 50 years, it is renewables which is going to be replacing most of these sources of energy. And where India is today, we have a historic opportunity to start with looking at the future and not rely on some historical modes of energy. And that is why we felt that renewables is the place to start with.
In 2010, he hit upon the novel idea of getting into the wind energy space. And to make that happen, he listed Mytrah Energy on the AIM segment of the London Stock Exchange and raised $80 million from institutional investors such as Capital Group, BlackRock, and Henderson. Since then, it has raised approximately $570 million of mezzanine and senior debt to fund construction of over 500 megawatts of wind power in India, which are all kicking profits.
When we started out, this was an entrepreneurial company, as I said. So we looked at all options to raise the capital. We looked at doing a PE round in India, PE round in overseas, but so we got better valuations in overseas market, and the listing was more technical in nature. It is not something that was required from our side, but it was more required from our investor side. So I wouldn't really treat this as this, out of the 80 million that we raised, about 90% or almost 100% of the money was put in just by 4 investors. So it's a technical listing, but for all practical purposes, it's private equity investment. But the advantages of the listing from a company perspective is that we were able to bring in corporate governance levels that are usually reflective of companies that are probably 20, 25 or 30 years of age.
Clearly, Mytrah has lived up to investor expectations. It has optimized equity returns and reduced risks by including structured financial products, which are clearly visible in its financials. From a loss of $2.5 million in 2011, the company has earned a net profit of $1.85 million on a turnover of $69.5 million in 2014. Well, on that note, it's time for a short break. When we come back, CNBC TV 18's Mytrah Energy talks to Mridul Mehta of ICICI Securities to find out why they are betting big on this company. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Mytrah Energy has been growing at a phenomenal rate in a sector that has yet to take off in a big way in India. Mytrah Energy caught up with Mridul Mehta of ICICI Securities to get an investment banker's perspective on Mytrah Energy.
So, for a new kid on the block, Mytrah Energy has really proved its mettle. What is it you think that sets this company apart from its competitors?
The company has actually had a great start in terms of hitting the ground running. In a very short period of time, they put up a large capacity because they acquired wind farms on a turnkey basis, so that they did not actually have that lag period of identifying sites and putting up these projects, because of which it has achieved scale in a short period of time. And most importantly, their promoter Ravi Kailash is very passionate about this business. And I think that's what has led the company to grow to this size in such a short period of time.
Okay, it's interesting that you bring up Ravi Kailash because he's often called an unconventional entrepreneur. Many say that he has a knack for spotting emerging business trends. So you think this could be the X factor for Mytrah Energy?
Definitely. Ravi is somebody who is, as I said, passionate about this business. He believes that this business can be grown to a scale which is probably one of the largest in India. He himself, while he's built up this business from scratch, his entire shareholding he's actually put in a trust, which he is committing to philanthropic purpose. So the passion for this business and passion for the renewable energy is actually extending to actually giving something back.
This company is also a company which has relied heavily on structured finance, the non-dilutive mezzanine financing, for example, set an industry benchmark. But how will this strategy work for them in the future? Could it be a little bit risky, you think?
Financing through either mezzanine or equity depends on what stage of the cycle of these projects you are. And while there's nothing right or wrong that you can fund the initial part through equity, it is okay to fund it through mezzanine as long as you are confident about the performance of your projects, because in the case of mezzanine financing there would be some level of servicing that you would have to be done. But it's a type of financing which you can actually flip over at the time of raising equity or going public. This financing is effectively paid back. So it's an interim measure, which it's nothing right or wrong. It's worked very well for Mytrah anyway.
Okay, so will they be going public, or is that the advice that they should be going public soon?
So I think they will go public at some point in time. They've built a scale of over 500 megawatts. They have committed financing for almost 1100 megawatts. And once that is done, in the next financial year, FY 16-17, I don't see any reason why the company shouldn't be planning for an IPO.
Okay, and it's not just the primary market, but the renewable energy sector itself is looking so good this year, right? And going ahead, given the kind of boost that the government is planning to give to it. But how do you think Mytrah Energy would be positioned vis-a-vis their peers or their competitors?
Mytrah, a couple of things that they have done really sets them apart. What they have done is they have invested a lot on the putting together a team on the ground, which actually scouts around for good sites. They have actually invested a fair bit of money in putting up wind masts at different locations. So you have some history of which are the sites which would have a good PLF. And all these factors, the direction of from the top management, the team, as well as what operations what they put on the ground, puts together a package which actually sets them apart, unlike others who would be a lot of, if you exclude the top 5-8 sort of players, others don't have the wherewithal to have a large team who can actually do all this. And that's what actually sets apart Mytrah, which can hold them very well in the long run.
Okay, but one of the challenges that a company in this sector could face is that, okay, on the one side, there is the government boost or the added incentive to be in this sector. On the other hand, like we've seen happen with so many other spaces, is that there are too many players that enter the market, and many of them could end up falling by the wayside. They'd end up squeezing margins of the other players. So what is it which is that one incentive for a company to be in this space, or for another new entrant to actually come and be a part of the renewable energy space?
As you said, Sumara, there are a lot of players in this space, but what really distinguishes is people who can achieve a particular scale. And there will be a consolidation in the industry, but the ones who would be the survivors and the one who would be the growing faster would be the ones who have achieved scale. And we believe Mytrah is a player which has already achieved that and is actually poised to grow much faster than the industry.
Okay, but what are the challenges for them? I mean, are there any significant challenges that you see, at least in the medium to longer term then?
The challenges are what are linked to the industry. So you have issues relating to the payments from the electricity boards. There are issues relating to land getting, while the sites you have identified are good, but is the land there available at the right price? There are grid parity issues. So I think there are certain issues related to the industry which could act as hurdles. But as long as you've done your homework right and you've put together a team and a process in place which can help you grow, I think that should help a player like Mytrah.
All right. Thanks so much for joining in with your take.
Well, that was Mridul Mehta's take on the company. On that note, it's time for another short break. When we come back, we look at the road ahead for Mytrah Energy. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Mytrah Energy is a 100% foreign-owned company in India. Its listing at AIMs was sponsored by large investors like Capital Research Group and Henderson Global Investors. Mytrah Abdi caught up with Milind Joshi of IDFC Alternatives to understand his investment philosophy.
Milind Joshi of IDFC Alternatives now joins in. Hi, Mr. Joshi. This is a company that has raised money even before their project took off. So what is it that gives a PE player like you the confidence to invest in a project like this?
When we started looking at renewables sector, which was around 2008-2009, we saw the fundamental changes which were happening, and we were quite bullish on the sector. And from our perspective, what we were looking for was a company which could meet two prime criteria. One is what was the strategic vision? Was there a fit between the strategic vision of the team, of the sponsors, with what we were looking for? And second, did they have the ability to scale up the business? Because end of the day, this business is going to be a scale business at some point of time. And Mytrah Energy fitted well with that. At that point of time, we committed 350 crores, and we were looking for the company to scale up business beyond 500 megawatt.
So if you were to do a comparative analysis with its peers in India and abroad, where do you think the company stands?
If I were to simply look at the size of the portfolio, Mytrah probably would be top 3 or 4 players in the country today. But I think one needs to look at beyond that. One needs to also focus on the organization that the company has built in, which could take it to the next level of growth. And I'm happy to say that Mytrah has built such an organization structure, not just from the perspective of assembling a team, which is very high caliber team, but also having very robust processes, which would make sure that the implementation from current 500 megawatt to gigawatt level will not be a challenge. The third aspect which the company has focused on also is the relationships that it has built with various financial institutions and banks. And these are not just domestic banks, but they also have relationships now with overseas banks and financial institutions. It's very critical to have these relationships because the growth essentially will be funded by the financiers.
Okay, so would you look at increasing your stake in this company further?
We certainly would consider that. We invested in this company from our Fund 1. That fund is fully deployed, but we have raised another fund about $900 million. And as and when the need arises, we certainly would consider investing in this company.
All right, Mr. Joshi, thanks very much for speaking with us.
It's clear that Mytrah Energy has embarked on a healthy growth trajectory until now and is poised for vigorous growth in the future as it will add about 300 megawatts by next year's wind season. It has an active development pipeline of about 3,500 megawatts and is also planning to venture into the solar energy space.
I believe that Mytrah will soon be a 5,000 megawatt company in the renewable space in India, and the speed at which we achieve that will only be a function of the growth of the industry and removal of some of the constraints within the regulatory system within India.
Well, Mytrah Energy is at the right place at the right time. Its expansion plans dovetails with the new government's vision to generate 1,75,000 megawatts through renewable energy by 2022. Of this, solar power will have the lion's share of 1 lakh megawatts, followed by 60,000 megawatts from wind energy. Given this scenario, Mytrah Energy will see electrifying growth for years to come.
Well, that is a very interesting story. So what comes out loud and clear is that the energy sector seems to be attracting a lot of players. Amongst the many companies that have entered this space, Mytrah Energy seems to be on a sound footing because they'll be straddling both the wind and the solar space. With governments the world over pushing for clean, sustainable energy, Mytrah's results will certainly light you up. On that note, it's time to say goodbye. We'll see you next week with another interesting episode. Till then, keep watching CNBC TV 18.